Hi everyone, this is Alan McKay. Welcome to episode 112. I'm speaking with Ina Mellor, a teacher of VanArts as well as a former lead animator at MPC, Sony Imageworks, and senior animator Double Negative, Framestore, Guerrilla Games, and more. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Alan McKay Podcast. Alan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Alan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Alan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on alanmckay.com.
Okay, so welcome. This is episode 112. I'm losing count because we're knocking out some rapid fire. I hope everyone's enjoying the now 3 episodes per week that we're going through in December. Like I said, I'm trialing it out just to see how you're enjoying it, and at the same time, how sustainable it is with my crazy schedule as well. But so far, I really love the idea of this, just being able to theme a few episodes around the same subject every month and put out a lot of other material too. So at the moment, I've been putting out a lot of additional videos, actual tutorials on all these subjects as well. So actual screen recordings, things like that, explaining step by step a lot of the process and things I would do, a lot more hands-on rather than talking about it. I can actually show you, which is really cool. So on top of that, there's the guide, which came out with this as well, which is like a 20 or 30 page book. So for me, I really wanted to immerse you in that and go through a lot of different material from a lot of different angles, and I'm hoping this is something you're enjoying. So far, I'm getting a great response, which is really cool, and it's still early days. But that being said, I've also got another really cool announcement this week. I think it was originally scheduled for last week. Unfortunately, just so much required to get it out the door. I've basically been working on a new effects training series that I'm going to be releasing for free throughout December. So this is your 1 month that you'll be able to get access to this, but this is a live action visual effects training with actual character talent, creating a lot of digital makeup, liquid fluids, pretty advanced particle flow work, as well as getting into a lot of other fluids and gaseous stuff too. There's a lot that we go through. It's really cool. I'm really proud of this one. And if you want to get access to it, simply go to the show notes, or you can go to alanmckay.com/decay, DECAY, and you'll be able to get access to it there. So maybe that's a little bit of a hint as to what it is if you're using a word like decay for and digital makeup together. But yeah, so check that out. It'll be available as of today, and it'll be available throughout all of December. So this is your chance to get on that and do some new training, learn a new skill leading up to Christmas and next year. Okay, so the last thing I'll say is just in the show notes, if you go to alanmckay.com/112, so 112, you'll get access to the visual effects training there if it's easier. On top of that, you can sign up for the boot camp that's running this month, which again is free as well. And that is just all the supplemental training around a lot of the episodes that are out this month. So you'll get access to 10 additional videos, as well as 3 video tutorials, a written guide, and a whole lot of other cool stuff. So I'm excited about that. Christmas has definitely come early this year, so I hope you enjoy all of this training and really make the most of it. You know, make this your month. Front load the work now to set yourself up for the best year yet. So check it all out in the show notes. And that being said, I'm going to dive right into this interview. This is with Ina Mellor, formerly Ina Roediger, and she's a teacher at VanArts in Vancouver, but previously she's worked for Sony, Framestore, Double Negative, MPC, you name it. And she's an extremely talented character animator that I met very briefly when I was last speaking in Europe. I think this was last year. And I just thought it'd be fun to bring her on, talk about the industry a bit, and dive into a lot of her experience working in film and games. And yeah, I mean, it's really cool. We definitely cover a lot of great stuff. Ina has a lot of really great advice. I had a blast. So that being said, let's dive in. Cool. Let's just dive into this. But
Okay.
Ina, do you want to give a quick introduction to who the heck you are?
Okay. So yeah, I'm Ina Mellor, formerly Ina Roediger. After married, I changed my last name.
Hmm.
So that's pretty recent. I started out as a 2D animator and studying 2D animation, and then switched to 3D when I was at the Gobelins in Paris studying animation. Started off at Framestore working on visual effects on Harry Potter and did a couple of VFX projects there. And then sorry, I'm going to start again.
You
My
sure?
brain.
You're doing fine.
I am?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
It's totally fine. I mean, if you want, you could redo it, but I mean, we could just stop it before Harry Potter, and because I was gonna let you be like, all right, great, like the interview's done. You've gone through your whole history. Good. It's totally fine. Let's just
Okay.
roll from there. But that's also why
Yeah.
I sometimes do get everyone to introduce themselves because that way it eases people in a little bit. I don't
Yeah.
know. I've had some actually. It seems like always Germans, but I've had some where it's like I'll talk to someone for like 2 hours and become like best friends with them, and then I'm like, okay, so let's begin, and then they freak out completely and they're like meltdown after meltdown, and it's just kind of funny. You're fine. I'm not worried about
Okay.
that.
Right.
Need
I'll
a
just
drink yet?
yeah. So yeah, I'll just continue from so when I worked in London.
No, no. Well, I figure we'll dive into that in a moment. So, yeah, I just figured I'd give
Oh
you
yeah. Okay.
a quick
Uh,
introduction.
yeah.
So, yeah, this is gonna be one of those days. No, so I think it's pretty awesome. I mean, if we want to talk a little bit about your history,
Mm.
um, I guess
Like
for
depends like how much background information you want because I can talk about like how it kind of got into like also drawing and all that kind of stuff.
oh yeah,
I don't
well,
know.
yeah, I want to get into all that. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. Let's start from the beginning, just because it's going to make it easier to edit. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, basically, just give a quick introduction to like, I'm Ina, I'm amazing, and I do all this cool stuff, and blah blah blah, and from there we can kind of dive into your history because I always imagine it, usually a lot of these kind of go organically, and for you, I do think it's really interesting that you did get to study in multiple locations. You
Mm.
do have a traditional background, like all this stuff I want to touch base on. Plus the fact that you kind of did your first gig at Framestore. Most people don't go, okay, I'm moving to like a whole different continent as my first gig. And I think that's
Oh
like
yeah.
really interesting too. So
Okay.
we'll roll into all of it, but
So I'll
let's
do it
just
more general and then we can like go into
yeah,
detail.
because
Yeah.
that's kind of for me. I kind of figure. I mean, I'll give you a brief outline. I mean, I figure we'll go through a bit of introduction to who you are, but then dive into kind of your early work history, and even I think it is really cool that you do have a traditional background, and I think that that's something I'd love to talk about, just because in the past it's always been really critical to have a traditional let's say doing cell animation first and learning about keyframing before you ever get into that stuff with 3D. But these days, I kind of imagine a lot of people skip over that. So I'd love to kind
Yeah,
of talk
yeah.
about how much that's benefited you even
Mhm.
now and things like that. So yeah, let's dive into it again, and
Okay.
just give a quick introduction, and we'll rock and roll from there.
Okay. Um,
So yeah,
yeah.
if you want to give a quick introduction, who is Ina?
Hi, I'm
Yo,
Ina.
just totally screwing with you now. Sorry.
Okay, so yeah.
Serious face.
Okay, cheers. All right. Yeah, my name is Ina, and I'm an animator. I started out with traditional animation, but then kind of swapped to 3D animation during my studies, and
Mhm.
worked at studios in London and in Amsterdam, and then in Vancouver.
Mhm.
My studies were done in France, so I moved around quite a bit, and it's never been a problem. But now my roots are kind of here in Vancouver, where I'm going to stay for a while. I think I've
You're
switched
stuck.
to yeah,
Couple of
switched
kids and huge job history though.
yeah, I've switched to teaching, so which is a bit more stable than film project work.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
That's awesome. So that's actually something to talk about later on, is like the stability of. In fact, that's a really good thing, because yeah, the stability of our industry, because it's kind of interesting how yeah, we love what we do, but at the same time, like, it's one of those jobs that is so taxing on us that it's not always
Oh, yeah.
sustainable. So I find a lot of people now, like, tend to be working in film and then want to switch to games, just because at least then it's a longer form project. So you have like a 3-year project and it's not too crazy, or teaching, or just finding other ways to have that sustainability without killing yourself, especially if you've got family and everything else. I think it's our generation as well, because we kind of like when we all started doing 3D, right, or visual effects or animation and everything, we were kind of like the first big like younger group to hit kind of the ground running. And so we're all like kind of mid-end 30s now. So a lot of us are either having families or just want something where you don't have to work 12 hours a day because you kind of want to have a life as well. You know, you're past that 20-year-old kind of like, I'm just going to go for it, like, and not sleep ever. Well, I did that. I went back to a studio that I worked at like when I was, 20, 21 or something like that in LA. And I went back there being probably 33 or something, and just kind of looking around the room. I think that's kind of like, it was a massive shift for me, just like looking around the room, and I was happy with what I was doing, but just watching people kind of throwing themselves under the bus to like work till 5 a.m. and pretty much thanking the studios for doing it. I was just like, man, like I can't do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. So
bad.
Yeah, but that's just it. Like that was us like back then, but now it's like,
I know.
It's time to have a life.
It's so bad for production as well, because if you do all the ghost hours, you know, like they budget for a certain amount of hours, and then you do all the ghost hours that's happening, and it kind of doesn't really represent the work you're doing. Doesn't really represent what's being paid for, and it's just really biting everybody in the ass in the end. You know.
I love how we kind of just dive right into the guts of what's wrong with the industry. But I mean, you're absolutely right, and like that's another thing too. Is like day rate is always like that's one of the big issues, because there's been projects I'm on, like I love when you work at studios that are paying hourly, time and a half, double time, that sort of thing, but it isn't as common as you would expect. And like it gets to a point where you're on your 20th hour, and let's say you negotiated a $500 a day or $700 a day, whatever you're charging, but then like you do the math on like every hour that you're spending there, you divide down how much you're actually earning per hour, just because it's extending, it's bleeding out over the duration of the day. And like that kind of sucks. I mean, you're right, like you work all these additional hours, you're not being compensated, and in the end it's like you might be really passionate about what you're doing, but you're doing a disservice to yourself, but you're also doing a disservice to everyone else, because
totally
you're setting a standard that's acceptable to kind of kill yourself doing that.
And especially if you add on like a kid on top, or even 2 kids, forget about it. Like
I got 5 kids. What's up? It's
you have 5 kids. You're not working in the industry unless you have a partner that does everything. But like you wouldn't.
They deserve an award.
Yeah, it'd be difficult to live in Vancouver. Like most people are 2-income households over here, right? Because it's an expensive city. Like that's the other thing. Like most cities that have the hub with the film are expensive cities. So.
Yeah, I love Vancouver just for Vancouver, and I was so upset when it finally did grow a film industry, because I'm like, I want to live there just because it's a cool city, not because of film. And the price of it is so it's just kept ramping up. It kind of gets frustrating. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting, kind of looking at that, because you're right. It's not too sustainable, and at the same time, like if you have family and everything else, like I don't know. I remember when I was like 21. Having to throw away my dating life, because there's so many times I meet someone I really liked, and then I'd have to cancel them 3 times in a row, and it's just like, all right, at this point, there's nothing I can do. I'm just, I got to cut this one, because, it's just, you can't maintain a normal life and work those demanding
it's really
hours.
Funny actually that you mentioned that, because like now with the students, like towards the end of term when they're doing their final projects, we talk about going into the working world, and like having a good work-life balance and all that kind of stuff. And then they always say, like, so how does that work? Do relationships work out and everything? And I had a long-term relationship when I was doing my work when I was studying in Paris, actually, and then worked in Amsterdam. It's the reason I moved to Amsterdam was because my boyfriend then was living there. And there was not much of an industry, but that's how I got to experience games, because that was the biggest studio that was there. It's the first and last time I tried gaming.
Great impression.
Yeah, no, it just wasn't for me. It was a first-person shooter game, and I'm not a big gamer, and I'm not.
I got an interview with another female working on Doom, which is like the first-person shooter, on Sunday. So it's kind of funny that you say that.
I actually originally got hired at Framestore to work on Doom.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you remember the movie?
Yeah.
So I was on that for about, I think I was on it for a week, and then they moved me over to TV for 10 days, and then they moved me over to Harry Potter.
Wow.
Yeah, because at first they had hired me and they thought they were going to put me on Doom, but then you know how it is sometimes, then production were like, oh no, actually, I think, we'll try you out in long form TV, because they were doing Walking with Dinosaurs and everything. But then the head of 3D that was there at the time, Michael Eames, he said, well, why don't we put her on the Harry Potter show? So and I was super happy when they told me, no, do you want to go on to Harry Potter?
Work on Doom? Come on.
Yeah, I know. Like, no, I don't get to animate like a huge penis demon tongue for the next 3 months. That's so sad.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Going back to Amsterdam, sorry, I totally interrupted you before, and I want to hear all about how bad games are and your whole experience there. We were talking about relationships.
Oh, yeah. So, well, in the end, it was...
This is going to be a fun episode.
But because you move around, or a lot of times you move around a lot with our job, right? So not everybody, if you do manage to date outside the industry and find somebody that's not an animator or like in VFX or in film, those people normally have jobs that are kind of like staying in one place, And
right.
So that didn't really work out because I wanted to go then work in London because I didn't really want to stay in the games industry. And that was just because we did so much mocap, and the motion cleaning up motion capture is a bit like...
you don't like animating hands and the head and that's it?
Yeah, just looking for like flips and that the Euler filter doesn't catch. Very exciting.
When I worked, one of the many times I worked at Blur Studio, we had a huge French connection there. It was like 3 or 4, I think it was at least 4 French animators who came on to do this Twice Upon Christmas or something like a Disney thing at Blur. And the thing is, a lot of it was mocap. And actually, no, I take that back. That was using Character Studio and 3ds Max, which for animating is not fun. But then once they'd finished there, they were like, all right, well, there's plenty of game cinematics. They got onto doing a lot of game cinematic work, but all of that was mocap, doing like Vicon system. And yeah, it's just... all they did was animate faces and hands, and like the rest of the time, like, so you imagine as a character animator, you're excited about, oh cool, I get to work on this great stuff, and it's just like, no, I have no freedom whatsoever. Did you see the hand, like the emotion that came from it, like, yeah. So I can imagine it's not the funnest. And you're right, like, I've only dated once in the industry, and I purposely avoided that like the plague, and then I did that once, and I can say it's kind of interesting and at the same time kind of not good. So I guess I guess like any other relationship. But a
lot of people end up dating in the industry because like you're just like hanging out like for that long, and then you all go for drinks at the end of the day, and you don't really meet a lot of people outside. I've only dated once in the industry as well, which was after that relationship. And that guy I'm married to now, so
okay, well,
so that worked out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you go with, it's also, I guess, bonding and everything else if you're on these projects.
And you kind of understand each other's pains. And if you have to do, like when I was working on Oz and it was my first lead gig and everything, I was basically at work and I'd come home like at 11, 12, and like almost 7 days a week. So you don't really see each other much.
Except if you don't, dailies.
Yeah. If you don't have a partner that understands that, then it's pretty hard, because at one point I can, if you don't see each other, then where's the relationship, right? So I totally get that. And with my relationship I had in Amsterdam, like when I wanted to move on and go back working on film and everything, that just kind of, he wanted to stay in Amsterdam and I wanted to keep on moving, and I've always wanted to work in Canada or the US. So that's kind of how it, we're still friends and everything, but that's kind of how it ended. And I think a lot of people go through the same kind of thing.
Yeah, we'll actually focus on and you and your whole history in a moment. But no, I think it is such a valid thing that like most people have to be very understanding, and on top of that, have enough other distractions that are going to keep them going. Because you're right, like you go through these brutal periods of time where it's like, all right, like deadline time, and places like Sony tend to be pretty pretty reliable
Intense?
for. Well, I'll say I'll choose my words carefully. Reliable on like I remember on Smurfs, one of my buddies. This is Smurfs in
LA?
in Culver City, and
Yeah.
but that was it. Like it'd be like 2 years out, and they'd start switching to 6-day weeks, and then I think it was like 9 months out, then it was like 7-day weeks, and
Yeah, it's like normal now, the kind of it seems to be like the blanket 10s and 12s and the weekends. They just start bringing that in almost. It's almost like that's how they schedule it, So it seems to be like normal practice. It just really burns people out. It's a kind of I'm only guessing that they kind of go, okay, are we going to throw more bodies at this, or are we going to throw more time on the people that are there? So I think the first thing they do is throw more time at the people that are there, and then see if that works out.
Yeah, I wrote an article on like overtime versus productivity a few years ago after experiencing like the worst experience of my life with like just brutal hours for like actually it was in Germany. For brutal hours for like 3 months straight. I had 2 days off, and that's just because I told them I'm taking 2 days off as my birthday. I had my best friend fly out from Australia to see me, hadn't seen me the entire time, and I was sleeping at my desk, so I let him stay in my apartment just because I'd never actually been there. But that's just it. Like I feel like I've produced plenty of shows, and I feel like there are times where some people do think I can get free hours from these people if I just like burn them out. I'm getting free value for my product, for my thing, and in the end it's like people start working backwards. Like you get to a certain point where your productivity just completely drops. You're making mistakes.
Totally.
And on top of that, like morale and everything too, like do you want your people to stick around, or do you want them to resent the place and move on? And, there's been plenty of places that get a really bad rep that doesn't help long term either.
No, exactly. Like, I totally agree.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, that's the question I get a lot when I meet up with friends that are still working at film studios as well. So far, I've been away for a bit over a year now. 2 years, because I had maternity leave for 1 year, and then I switched to teaching, which I did for a year before going on this one. And I don't miss it at all. All I need to do is go for a lunch with people that are still working in it. And then I hear everything that's going on, and then I really sit there and think, wow, I'm really happy I got out at this point, because I got out when I had only experienced one burnout in my career, which is quite good. I think I could have had a lot more, but I've always been really good at trying not to sacrifice too much of my private time for work time. But then when I do have work time, I'm really concentrated and really efficient, So although I have to, I should also say I've definitely had also moments where, those moments where you kind of slack off a bit. Like I've experienced that too. You're working on something where you're like, ugh, when is it going to be over? But most of the time, I've worked on really amazing projects and with really, really good people. So I'm really happy that I have that to look back on. But I'm also really happy that now I have a job that starts at 9 and ends at 4. And then I go home and I see my kid,
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's so important. And I mean, I think in this industry where you are putting in so many hours that it's kind of okay to have those slack off moments, because it's kind of like, look, I'm giving you, 300%. So if I get like 10% back occasionally, then that's forgivable. I used to
you get so tired, right? Like it's really, you just have to step away or go for a walk for like 40 minutes or something just to kind of get away from it for a bit, because you're there all the time, right? It's really...
I used to have my hangovers when I was like 19 or whatever. I was really good in Maya at just orbiting around the viewport for about an hour or two. But then I'd make it up, I'd get back in the swing of things. I was like, I got really good at just like moving the viewport around so it looks like I'm doing something where I'm just like, I'm never drinking again. But
funny. Or with animation, you just go like play blast, and if it's a heavy scene, it has to play blast for 15 minutes, and then you move like the outliner or something across it and make a little drawing across
you just be like, man, this is a really sloppy rig. Like, look how slow the scene is. Man. Actually, that's one last thing I'll touch on, but I think that's really crucial is that, for you, like when you do go to work, when you were, and, but like, do you find putting in the time, like working, sorry, I'm trying to word this right. I'm still waking up here. But yeah, basically for me, I think it's really critical. Like I find that a lot of artists tend to goof around, especially younger, but like, there's like this kind of idea of this industry is really fun and goofy and you can drink lots of free soda and eat lots of candy and just like hanging out people's desks. And for me, like when I go to like, I've got so many friends who know me personally. They're like, "Oh, dude, it's gonna be a blast to work with you. Like, we're just gonna party all the time and all this." And when I'm at work, I am like, I have my headphones on. I have like a big like fuck off on the side of my headphones, pretty much, just saying like, "Look, I'm at work. I don't want to be here. I'm not in a negative way. Just like I'm going there to work and I want to get my work done. And I'm not someone that wants to spend a minute outside of work that I have to. And, I feel like it is such a big free for all for a lot of people that it's like, yeah, we're going to be here all night working. So let's just goof around. It's like, well, if you get your work done, then you could actually go out at 5 o'clock and have a life. So it sounds like you're a bit the same, that you go there,
I think
you're
that comes after a while, like it's kind of, I think at the beginning, it's nice as well. It's like with the students as well, like they're so excited to go into the industry, which is awesome. And I try not to be one of those people that kind of goes like, oh my God, you gotta go in.
Get out while you still can.
Let me tell you, your dreams will break. Because it's awesome to have that enthusiasm and everything. But yeah, it's like, I think when you've been in it for a while, you kind of go like, okay, like I'm getting paid to do this. I just want to finish it up because I have other stuff I want to get to as well, So it's like, yeah.
I think it's good. Balance. And like going back to your whole history, I mean, when you, did you always want to be an artist? Like, were you 5 years old? Like, I'm doing flip books and going crazy, or how did it work out for you?
It's actually quite funny because animation never really popped out to me as a job until I finished my, in Germany it's Gymnasium, so when you're like 18 and then you do your, I think it's like an international baccalaureate, like it's kind of the same level.
And then you join the army for years.
Yeah, you can join the army if you want. But I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but I definitely wanted to do something creative because my mom's an artist, so she paints and draws and everything. And I've always been painting and drawing a lot when I was little. And my dad's a banker, so he's like the financial brain of the family. But so I wanted to do something artistic, but then I also wanted to do something that I can live on. I kind of wanted to have those two things. And so I took a gap year after I finished school and kind of did some internships. I worked at a radio station, RTL in Luxembourg.
Oh, that's my favorite station.
And I thought I was going to go towards like TV or something, but more kind of direction, maybe with news or something like that. So, but I was always drawing little cartoons of all the moderators at the radio station. So they were saying, "Oh, these are really good. You should do something with drawing." And there's like this school in Luxembourg that does animation. Have you ever thought about that? And as soon as they mentioned it, I kind of felt a bit as if it had found me. You know what I mean? Like I'd always loved cartoons and I'd loved animation. I loved drawing. So I thought, oh, this is the perfect combination. And it's an actual job, It's not like being a freelance artist where you're trying to get shows at galleries and it's very unstable. It seemed a lot more. And back then the contracts and everything were a lot longer as well.
Yeah.
So I thought that's great, So I applied for that school and got in and started doing 2D animation at the Lycée Technique Arts et Métiers. And I know a lot of animators I know now come kind of self-taught into the industry, or like my husband, he's self-taught, and I went to like 3 schools. I did that one. And then I went to the Gobelins because they were looking for people for the graduate year in 2D animation. They used to have a relationship with that school. So I went there and then switched to 3D. And that was when they started to look into having some kind of exchange program with the Filmakademie Baden-Württemberg in Germany. And I was their one token German student. So they were like, it's perfect. We're going to start with Ina. So send her over there for a year. And so that's why like my path is a lot more kind of academic and going through all the animation schools rather than other people I've met that do now like a lot of online schools, and kind of teach themselves and get in that way.
Yeah, I was looking through your job history and when I was looking at the schools, I'm like, I hope you can pronounce these because I'm not going to try. But yeah, I mean, I think that the whole online training, I mean, I think it is the future in a lot of ways. And you've got guys like Carlos Baena and all those like Animation Mentor, and they're doing some really great stuff. And just in general, though, like it's more accessibility, I think, for a lot of people who can't relocate, and also affordability too. It's like you're not paying $40,000 a year in training. but
Oh, that's not Europe though. Like that's
I
not
guess
what
it's America. Yeah, but I
I come
mean,
from Germany, free education.
yeah, I know, right? Australia's mixed, but I mean, we've got different tiers of like what education is considered. So like you can, I think it just kind of comes down to, I think it's status. It's like if you want to pay for a certain degree at a certain university, then it's what you're doing is you're buying that piece of paper, which is why I thought it was interesting. At Harvard and MIT, a lot of places like that are now putting on like all their training for free, like all the videos, everything online. So it's more specifically the experience as well as the actual formal paper and everything that you're really getting when you go through that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of cool though. Like I was talking with Jason Shear, who's he was at the IMAG. I'm still going to call it It's Art Masterclass. I'm still used to that wording, but like the Paris event this year, and I mean, he studied till he was about 27 before he got into doing like concept work for DreamWorks. But the thing is, like, I kind of think in a way, it's like the more you're able to get those experiences, even if they're not 100% in an artistic area, you're still going to be able to apply a lot of that later in your career. So I mean, whether you do it right away or whether you hold off and learn a lot and then jump into it, like it's still going to catch up. So I think that's really cool.
I think that the Gobelins school in Paris really prepared me for rigid production work because back then when they had a 2-year program, especially when you were working on the trailers for the Annecy Festival, you had to follow a really strict schedule. And, at a lot of schools, you get an assignment and it's kind of like, oh, kind of hand it in 3 weeks. And then if you don't, you can still hand it in, like those kind of things, So it wasn't really like that there. It was very kind of like you hand it in on that date. And if you don't hand it in, then, you get your points and everything. And because you're working in a group, you don't want to let anybody else down. So it's like that kind of team thing. It's really well thought through. And then going to the Filmakademie where I had a year to work on my short film, that was a lot more kind of trying to get people to do stuff for you and like find them and then convince them. And, it was like very different. You kind of let loose a bit more. So it's a really different kind of structure.
Sounds like you're being trained to be an independent director or something. It's like, hey, I need a favor and I'll pay you back in a few years.
Filmmaker thing, where you're going, how am I going to get this made? And you start doing really weird hours and you go to 24-hour supermarkets at 3 a.m. and you go like, oh, this is weird. But all that I think was really good training because when I started, because I actually met the Framestore guys at FMX at the job fair, which I recommend to any student is like going to festivals and job fairs. It's a great place to meet people, right?
Oh yeah.
So, that was where I met the Framestore guys and gave them my stuff and went over for an interview and got the job. And then when the job started after doing Gobelins and then the Filmakademie, I felt like, man, this is so nice, It's like really regulated hours. And then I was like, I just have to work on one thing at a time. I was like, this is awesome.
Well, I will say that like I always wanted to go to university, and for the longest time I kept convincing myself maybe I still will, and it got to a point where I'm like, I would not have the discipline to go and study and do all the stuff. Like it's, what we do is grueling, but at the same time, like it's a lot of work. But like university is like you've got so many different things going on, and you got to throw yourself in the fire so much that it does take like a lot of discipline to pull that off. So in a way, I'm sure at first it is a bit of a walk in the park to actually go and have one place, and your set of responsibilities are usually pretty clear, and it might get crazy hours here and there, but at least it's you're not being pulled in 50 directions. So,
I think it really taught me to just get things done and like not procrastinate. I used to procrastinate about everything, I think it's a disease that a lot of us are fighting.
Yep.
But it definitely helped me get over that a bit and just kind of, because like my problem was always just to get started. And I'd be always good at like doing lists and like knowing what I needed to do, but actually doing them would always like, I'd always do them last minute and then almost die trying to finish it.
Yep.
So, I think that time, like early on in my 20s, like that really taught me how to kind of keep that in check a bit. And I think that really helped me when I started working.
That's so cool.
Because I just like put my brain on like focus and then just go for it.
So when you first decided like, oh, maybe I should try going to school and pursuing my creative career, did did you ever have that mentality of like, especially let's say if your dad came from more of a financial background of, the starving artist and, like there's no job security, things like that? Or were you like, oh yeah, like I'm going to be a millionaire doing this stuff?
No, I never really thought that much about money, to be honest. All I wanted to do was be able to pay my rent and be able to like go out and have a good time,
Which
like
requires you to be a millionaire in Vancouver, but yeah.
Well, starting out in London, like I had a super low salary. Like I started out on 18K, so that's like back in 2004, right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty rough. Like I was in a flat share, like a lot of people do in London as well. And then I could either, save up some money and go watch a movie in the week, or then use that to buy a couple of pints at the pub on the Friday. But that's like how it started out. But you have to start somewhere, right? At least I didn't work for free, because I've always heard and always told myself, like, don't work for free. That's like really bad as well for juniors and people that are trying to make it in the industry, which is still nowadays, like studios try it, they go like, oh, but you get work experience. So then why don't you just come work for free? It's like, it's like, no, I'm doing work for you. I should get recompensated.
Yeah, it's like, are you making money off of it? Great. Well, why does it have to stop at you? I've started to change my tune a little bit about the whole work for free thing. Basically the way I see it is that you should explore any opportunities that come at you. Like, let's say someone has a short film they're working on. They're like, hey, it doesn't pay, but I really need a hand doing all this stuff.
But that's like an independent project,
exactly.
Right?
But when it's something where you're blatantly just being taken advantage of, then no, like never ever do that. And the big picture, and I think I'd rather look at it more from just self-respect. But like the big picture is basically, if you work for free, then everyone else is going to, it's going to become more acceptable that like that is the norm. That people can come in, they work for free for a few months, and eventually they get paid a little bit once they're about to get evicted. And then at the same time, all the senior people get upset because if they're trying to command like really high fees and they've got all these juniors coming in charging nothing, then that becomes an issue too. And there's also been a lot of controversy around like Digital Domain Florida and other places that were essentially bringing people in to study as on the job. So there's all that kind of stuff. But I think in the end, it's more about just self-respect. You were putting in the hours and.
There has to, but there has to be like a kind of a balance, because the big studios that are offering like academy programs and internship programs and everything, that's really great for people that come out of school and like have no production experience but want to try to get into the big houses right away. But they still, they get some salary. Like you should be able to sustain yourself with the work you do, even if you live in a flat share with 6 people and 1 bathroom or something, but you should be able to kind of start somewhere, right? Without having to go to the bank or your parents or...
Yeah, and I know there's one story of like back in Sydney. I was just about to move to the US. It must have been like 2003 around then. And there was like a guy, he wasn't there when I was there, but there's this guy who had just started out. He'd working for 6 months for free. And eventually he was going to the bosses saying, can I please start getting paid? Because I've gone through all my savings and now I can't afford to pay my rent. And they're like, okay. And like they gave him some like ridiculously low salary. Something really low. It was like 15 or something a year.
Wow.
It's just like so screwed up. It blows my mind that sort of thing happens. But at the same time, like I will say on the flip side, because there is a lot of buzz, I'll say there's a lot of people making a lot of money right now talking about how bad the industry is. And the thing is, you can make a lot of money. And I actually, the talk I gave this year in Paris, I decided to actually share like my salary every single year of my career up until about 2013 or 2012. But just to point out, like, it was more to kind of showcase like, here's the normal salaries, and then here's where I changed a few things in my career. And I was able to like triple my salary just by changing the rules a little bit of how you do things and getting a bit more control back on your end. But that's just it though. I think that you can make a lot of money, but you kind of need to think outside the box and not be the regular Joe Blow employee who comes in, works at the studio, and you need
to. That's the thing. Like they don't really teach you how to negotiate right?
Exactly, yeah.
Studying, like negotiating or interview situations and all that kind of stuff, which I've started doing with the students when they're in the last kind of weeks before finishing the term. We do interview situations, and I just talk to them about like kind of what they can expect for starting salaries. And it's really funny doing those mock interview situations, because sometimes the students come in, like they haven't worked in animation ever, right? But they sit down, they go like, yeah, and I just ask them to see what they'll say. I'll say like, so do you have any salary expectations? And they go like, yes, I think I'll start around like 45K, you know. But then, you know, I mean, when's the review? When can I ask for more? And I'm like, oh my God, you can't say that. You haven't even worked at a studio or anything yet, you know. Like, okay, maybe wait a couple of years until you have something under your belt, and then you can start doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, negotiation 101, let them put the numbers up front. Like, never.
Yeah, it's like you don't name a number first. Like
I've done that before, and you can secretly see them smiling, like, "Oh my God, you just saved us, you know, tens of thousands of dollars by opening your big mouth." You know,
I think because we're all artists, right? And we're kind of also, if it's a good project, we get kind of excited about it, and it's not like production doesn't know that. Like, say they know that you want to work on it, you know, so they'll try and push for something where they can save a bit. Yeah,
and that's the sucky thing too, is that it is considered such a fun industry that because that's like, come on, you get to work on Doom. So you know, because of that, it's just like, you know, we're doing you a favor sort of thing, which really sucks. And like, I will say there are certain places that have Star Wars as an IP, and like that definitely is like a privilege, and they know it. Getting to, you know, even some of the big studios, like going to work for Framestore or wherever else, like it can be kind of like, we are Framestore, therefore, you know, we're going to pay a little bit less than, you know, someone else who needs to compete, you know, to get like the good people. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you know, there's a lot of variables to it.
Yeah, I think when you're starting out, you know, just try and get in somewhere that has interesting projects for whatever, as long as you can kind of survive, you know, and then you work on a couple of projects so you have that under your belt, and then you switch. And then when you switch, that's when you up your value.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Actually, I wasn't going to ask this question because I always think it's a dumb question, but I do have... I'm totally putting my foot in my mouth now. I do have a pretty strong female audience, which I think is awesome, considering like the content is more, you know, visual effects and 3D. But that is one thing that's always going to come up a lot. Is I've gotten a lot of emails like, please get more women on here, and but at the same time, there's always that perspective, like, what's it like for other women in the industry? So that's what I mean for me. I'm like, every time I spoke to any women I know, usually it's like, it's normal, it's fine. But like, what's your perspective working in the industry as a female?
Yeah, I also think that the question is always quite funny, because like you get that asked quite a lot when you're working in the industry as a female. And I would say kind of any project I've worked on, I've never really felt like the female, you know,
right,
on a project, like in the team. Like sometimes when you go to an interview situation or when you talk to producers, they go, we want to have more women join, you know, and they make like a point out of it sometimes. But once you start on the job, you're like one of the animators, you know, you kind of, you get your shots, you pull your weight. And I've never felt that there was a big difference negatively or anything because of my gender ever.
No, it's good.
Really,
I mean, that's how it should be too. I think
if you have the ability, you know, and you work well and you're good at what you do, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, a male, female, green, blue, whatever. Like if you work well in a team and you're positive and you get shots done and everything, then they'll love to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it should be that way in general anyway. And you know, anytime I have brought it up, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, it's good to get a female perspective. It's always been like, I you know, never felt like I'm not, you know, one of the guys or one of the team. But I do know some women in the industry that have kind of been the other way around, where it's very, you know, everything sucks and it's so one-sided. But most of the time, I hate to say it, like there's certain people who kind of have played the female card, and then as soon as it doesn't work in their favor, that's when they've kind of gotten really kind of like, oh yeah, this is because I'm a girl. And it's like, stop using that word and start saying I'm an employee, then like I think that everything will work out. So
I mean, I'm not saying, the thing is, there are differences, of course, you know. Like, there's a, you know, it's different being a girl or a woman at the workplace than being a man at the workplace, for sure. And I mean, that would be a lie as well if I would kind of say like it's completely equal, you know. It's a different dynamic and everything. And I've seen that too. Like I've seen, you know, female colleagues as well that kind of like try and play the female card more. But I don't know. Like for me personally, I've never really felt like that was something. I've never really felt like I've done that consciously or whatever. You just like who you are, you know.
Yeah, you're professional.
Yeah. Like, and if something sucks and doesn't work out, I mean, that's kind of happened to me as well, where then I heard through the grapevine, this was like a studio in France, but I heard then that they were actually had a producer that she liked to keep her team all male.
See, sorry to cut you off, but like it's just funny, but the last like 2 or 3 years I've heard so many of these sorts of stories where it's just like it kind of shocks me and scares me a little bit. But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, so when that happened, I mean, that's just, I heard that from somebody, right? So I don't know exactly how true that is, but I was really surprised because it's the first time I'd ever heard it. And it was a pity that it didn't work out. Although, you know, French studios don't pay that well either. So I was kind of so-so on the job. But when I heard that, I thought like, oh, that's really surprising, you know? Like normally it's more the other way around where the girls kind of stick together. You know what I mean? It's actually more a disadvantage for the guys. Like normally if you, because it's quite a strong community. And then if you have the numbers. Yeah, if you have the option between like a female artist and a male artist and they're both fairly equal, then a lot of times the female artist gets picked, you know? So if anything, a lot of times it's an advantage, really.
I guess like, not talking from experience, but obviously, but, you know, it can also come down to the environment. I mean, any negative experiences, you know, I hate to I'm not tiptoeing around any female subject. I'm actually tiptoeing around not like offending game people. But you know, I think that there is certain game studios or more the game mentality that it is like I worked a few game places the last couple of years where it has shocked me how male, like it's just all men, like which kind of was like wow, like this, you know, was kind of surprising just because you work in film and a lot of other areas. Basically it's like, oh, if you're good, you go get a job. And I guess maybe it's just more that environment attracts certain people.
I think more guys play games than girls, maybe. I'm not sure.
It's definitely changed. Like, you know, I remember like back in the 90s, like if a girl had a computer, it was like, oh my God. Like, but now it's like, then it's like 1999 and every girl had an email address and, you know, suddenly it's like they're on MSN or whatever. And like bit by bit, it's like the world is changing. And yeah, it's like, I don't know, like these days, I think it's pretty... I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I'm a guy and I play.
Remember when all the female characters in games were were basically under the chin, you know, like all the anatomy was completely off because all guys like add on something.
Yeah, I knew this one artist. She was always like getting upset about that. It's like, you know, guys can't draw boobs, you know, and it is though. It was like the 90s. I will say, like I've always thought about the 90s as being like the year where we got away from the 80s and all these other things. It was more like, all right, like things weren't as ridiculous. You know, maybe the way we dressed was like really loud colors and stuff like that. But in general, I kind of felt like humanity kind of started to get a normal tone of like just being normal. But then I guess when you turn to video games, you know, that's where it was like a whole Wild West. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. Like, I do think that these days there are a lot of like it's pretty balanced male and female gamers. I'm not a gamer, but I think that in a way has forced it to kind of become a bit more neutral too, opposed to. You know.
Yeah, I think game studios still are very male heavy, you know, but also just because like I think that a lot of the really high, like very high tech jobs, there's just more males in it than girls. You know, with the like there's not that many female like R&D and lighting and all that. Although that's not true in compositing, I know quite a few now.
Well, yeah, that's interesting because like compositing in 2D and production, you tend to get a lot, but. I don't know what it is about Seattle, but I know at least 3 women who are in very high-end technical jobs up there at like big companies like NASA. I know it's not in Seattle, but for some reason she's up there. But then NVIDIA, Microsoft, I don't know, maybe Seattle just brings them up there.
Yeah, but it's not the norm, right? Like it's normally quite like that's always something. It always sticks out. Then I find. When you have like somebody that's female in that role, which is awesome. but something like that's not a job I could do.
But yeah,
like working games, like I think that you just have to have like a good sense of humor, you know,
yeah.
and it doesn't hurt if you can hold your drink. And
It's a requirement, male or female.
No, but you know, and then you can't be too sensitive to certain things, I find. So, and you'll do great and you'll have a good time if you do that. I think if you're too caught up on certain gender issues and everything, you might not have such a good time. Like, I quite like, I think dirty jokes are funny, and like
dirty jokes are awesome. What are you talking about?
And like, self-deprecating and everything can be hilarious. So it's kind of have to go with the flow and not take things too seriously.
You sound awesome. I want to hang out more now. No, it's funny. The other day I was having a conversation. I forget who it was, with my fiance and someone else. Like it was two females, but I didn't actually intend to talk about this subject so much. But it was like one of those moments where let's say that being the opposite sex can be kind of counterintuitive. Where let's say being too sensitive and things like that can really not be a good attention seeker for yourself. And I remember one of my friends, she's an editor now, but she was more kind of reception at like a studio in San Fran, and she wanted to move into editing. And basically she figured if she works her butt off, eventually the opportunity will come up, and the opportunity did. And then last minute, someone else got the editing gig. And, I just remember talking to her that day about like the whole thing, and she was like, yeah, I was so upset. But then I started to cry, and then, the guy didn't know what to do. So then he kind of like gave me an extra job editing that didn't exist. So I'm really happy I cried. And it's like one of those moments where I'm just like, I know so many women who would just punch you right now. You know what I mean? So, it's just one of those things too. It's like, you're right. Like there may be some extra steps at being female. You've got to kind of be careful about how you're presented. And that's why I do know some women who tend to be on the other side of things, where it's like, they would get very angry if like they saw someone do that, just because they work so hard to be taken seriously. And if you do get someone who kind of milks that or doesn't intentionally do it, but it just you don't see many guys crying if they don't get a job. And now I am putting my foot in my mouth, but you know what I mean? Yeah, you're right. They
make it to the bathroom and then they go, ah!
you're better than this, Alan. Okay, I guess you've heard stories. But anyway, I don't know. I think it is a pretty interesting subject, and it's one that, usually, I've always gotten the same thing. It's like, everything's peachy, everything's great, and but I don't know if you, I guess going to Framestore, like that was your first gig right out of the bat. So like that was in London, right?
Yeah, that was it.
So how'd it go? Like, what was it like literally moving? I guess it wasn't to a different continent then, but like moving
from Germany.
Yeah, like it's still a pretty big deal. It's like a $59 trip on Jetstar.
I know, it takes 45 minutes. It's pretty intense.
But was it intimidating, like going somewhere that big and onto feature films and Harry Potter?
Yeah, I think moving was not really a problem, because I moved every 3 years of my life since I was born, because my dad was doing a lot of he was working for like the German and English banks.
Sounds like he works in VFX.
Yeah, but so we moved every 3 years. Yeah, or military, right? Like I meet other people that have military dads, and they move every 3 or 4 years as well. So I grew up basically between Munich and London. So I'd been to London before, like St. Albans and Kingston is where I lived when I was little. So it didn't feel like the city was unfamiliar to me. I was kind of like afraid of like, okay, I'm going to go there and then have to set everything up by myself and find a flat share and all those things. So it's quite like anxious to get that kind of sorted out and everything, and also proving myself, like being at a new studio, I wanted to do really well and everything. So it was quite nerve-wracking, but also really exciting, those first couple of months. I think the first 3 months are always a bit rough when you go somewhere new, because you have to find your footing and you have to set everything up. And then after that, when everything's like kind of rolling, you start finding your groove more. But yeah, I just it's like I said, like after coming from the Filmakademie, where I was trying to, where I worked on a short film, trying to get things done with other people and working kind of weird hours at one point as well, because they weren't set, So then going to a work environment where you have set hours and you have your team and everything, it all felt very stable and really nice.
It's cool. That's really cool. And what were you doing on Harry Potter? Like, what type of work?
So it was for the Goblet of Fire. So it was the underwater sequence. So he has that Tri-Wizard tournament, and so we got the sequence with the mermaids and the Grindylows. It was like Grindylows swinging past the camera, and my first bigger shot. The first shot I worked on, I think Harry was about the size of a little rice grain on the screen. In the background, behind a lot of sheets of like gray and green in the water, and
that was the most rewarding moment of your life.
Yeah, it was that, and a couple of fish, like that little blob up there. I did that, and then after I did that well, they gave me one where he swims in front. So Daniel Radcliffe swims in front of the camera behind a rock, and then you switch to a CG Harry, and he swims off through the kelp forest. So that was my first kind of challenging shot, where he's really big on screen, and I had to match, Daniel Radcliffe's swim, and then like turn that swim, a little bit awkward swim, into a dynamic swim so that he could get to the kelp forest.
Nice. Was it intimidating at all? Like, a lot of pressure? Like, if I screw this up, I'm going to have a lot of angry teenagers.
No, not really. I mean, I'd only just started reading the books back then. Mm-hmm. And I knew there was a fan base and everything, but I didn't think about that too much working on it. I was way too focused on trying to impress my supervisor.
Cool.
And do a good job, yeah. And they were super good. Like, it was a really nice environment because, like, I think they know that you're nervous and you want to do well on your first job. And they were super encouraging and really positive, giving feedback and everything, with a lot of swearing because it's London. I've never heard so much.
Fucking swearing. Great. You can fucking do it better. Yeah.
It's really crazy.
I think it's important too. Sorry to cut you off. Like, I think it is really important though, like, to kind of compensate a little bit when people are starting out, because they don't, let's say if, for me, I'm pretty brutal when I'm souping stuff. I'm going to say like, yeah, this looks like shit, but you've got it all set up now, so let's just focus on hitting those beats and getting it all working, or whatever. It's more about the solution. I'm not going to like, give someone a hug and be like, you can do better. But at the same time, like, if people aren't used to that, if people are going to take it to heart, like, oh, he said it's shit, then, I think if you know that they're new, or if you can read how people are responding, then of course you're going to compensate a little bit. And I've been in that boat when I was young, where people, it would be more like they just wouldn't be present at all. They just, wouldn't give you any direction, and you kind of feel alone. So I think it's critical in the beginning for sure.
I'm definitely more on the direct side as well. It's like, I'm German Korean, so like put those two together and you don't get a lot of flowers with your feedback.
But I think it's important, because I thought about it recently. I've been doing like my mentorship, and I've been giving people feedback there, and I've been a little bit conscious about, okay, well, do I do it how I would in dailies? But I think it is like, you're training people for the real world, and like, I'm sure you can comment on this too. Like,
you can be direct without being mean, you can just like, and it's better, because if it gets too flowery, it's just confusing. Like, you need to
you don't want to say this is great when it's not,
Also, you don't want to leave that door open where somebody brings something back with like almost no changes because they think, well, it's almost good, and then you get it back and you go like, no, actually, could you please just like scrap that and do it again, kind of thing,
She almost didn't swear.
But so,
that's good.
But working, it's really funny coming from Europe as well, because like, especially in France, if you work in France, like the highest praise you probably get is like, that's not bad. Like, not bad means like, oh my God, amazing. I like did something well, And then you go to London and you get like all the like swearing and everything, but super nice and super apologetic. And then you come to North America where it's all like, okay, awesome, great. But maybe try this.
But everything else is great. You're doing a great job.
It's like
the sandwich.
Funny.
Yeah. I felt that like, I really like that in a way with America in general. With the US is, and I think that in a lot of ways, I feel like Canada and the US are very similar, in some ways very not. But I have kind of really loved the fact that people are encouraging here, and I don't know, it's just one thing I kind of observed is that it isn't as cutthroat. I feel like everyone in Australia is very competitive, and I don't know, I hate describing it because in one way I completely believe that, and the other way it's not. Everyone's like so laid back and chill that no one really gives a shit. But at the same time, like no, people aren't afraid to take a jab at someone if if they can. And with the US, it's everyone, people encourage you even if they don't know you. It's always going to be more encouraging and positive than negative. And I think that in a way I can really appreciate that about the US and with Canada too, opposed to not having that.
Yeah, I think working here is really nice. I think that's why we've stuck around here as well. This is the longest I've ever stayed in one place in my life. Yeah.
That's cool. I love Vancouver. It's cool. And like, so
it's great.
When did you move there?
2011. The 1st of January 2011.
So that was just as like the film industry started to boom. I think I left in 2010. So
yeah. Sony had just opened.
Right. They were in Pixar's office, right? Or was it? No, it was DD.
No. They were in Yaletown back then.
I love Yaletown. I'm sorry, but I was one of those people. Well, hear me out, because like, okay, when I worked at ILM, I lived in the marina in San Fran, and everyone's like, "Oh, you work in the marina, or you live in the marina," and I'm like, "No, like, you don't understand. I wanted to walk to work every day, so that's why I live in the marina, because the marina is meant to be all yuppie people." And then when I lived in Vancouver, I lived in Yaletown on like Cambie and Nelson, like on that corner there. Yeah. And it's just like for me, I lived there because I got put up on like on Davie Street at that hotel, the really fancy one. I forget it now.
The one down towards the water.
Yeah, exactly. And because like Activision put me up in a hotel there, so I kind of got to know the neighborhood, the bartenders, and after all, I was like, this is my hood. Otherwise, I would have moved to Kits because it's like way more affordable, and you've got the amazing beach with the 3-inch tall waves.
Yeah,
it's like, this is your beach, really. But yeah, so I always get kind of like put in these snobby areas. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're in Yaletown. Yaletown's full of like, snobby people."
Yeah, I'm gonna have to move now. Hang on.
No worries.
One second, because my son just got back from gymnastics, and if he hears me upstairs, he's gonna run upstairs, and then there'll be no more.
That's totally
no more talking.
I'll try to stay on point for the rest of this too. I know we're kind of jumping around, but I'll let you get settled.
Yeah. I'm just gonna put it here. Okay.
Are you just trying to like combine tasks? It looks like you're in the laundry room. So.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna start folding laundry. So if you don't.
So anyway, like for you after Framestore, like where did you go after that?
After Framestore, I went and worked at Double Negative for a bit. That was during the time where for John Carter they were hiring a lot of people. And everything, and then everything got delayed, right, for a year or so on that project. So I got put on Iron Man 2 and then Paul. And during that time, I think John Carter like changed things a bit for the industry, like when all that went really badly.
Just because it blew the budget out so much, or like why do you think?
Well, that as well, because a lot of studios had the work and then started like hiring, like overhiring. Had a lot of artists kind of sitting there like idly, waiting for stuff to come around, and then things started getting pushed, and so people started getting laid off, and people that had moved, from like also Spain or other countries for a week or two, and then got told, sorry, you goodbye, which really sucked. So I don't know, like at that time, everything seemed to be like drying up a bit in London and like really unstable. And that's actually why after talking to my now, like Michael, so my now husband, we were both kind of going like, okay, we should try and maybe go somewhere else. We've been in London for almost, I'd been there for like almost 4 years. He'd been there for over 5 years, and it felt like a good time to move on. So that's why I sent my stuff off to Sony, because I heard that they were opening. And I almost missed their email because it went to my spam. So I just caught it in time. It was like an email that said checking back in. And I thought, that's weird. And I opened it and they're like, yeah, just like seeing, like we didn't hear back from you. And I'm like,
Checking back in. I'm a prince in Nigeria and I have a bunch of money to send you.
Put your details under this link.
It's kind of funny though how like, you can almost miss those like really amazing opportunities. And timing's everything too.
Yeah, totally. So I got back to them. We had a phone interview, which was really fun actually, because the animation director I think was supposed to be there, but he got called away. So I was talking to one of the other supervisors, and basically we just had a chat about Vancouver, which was really fun. And so then they sorted the visa out. And during that time, I did a bit of freelancing, which I hadn't done before, for commercials
Cool.
in London. And that was a lot of fun, actually, because I'd never tried doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's shorter projects, it's better pay, and it's like a higher turnaround. But then on the other hand, I really liked that, because it pushed me to like animate fast. Because sometimes when you're doing animation in film, like, to be honest, like, when you work on one shot for like 12 weeks,
you lose that momentum. You lose like the passion for it after a while. The momentum.
Yeah, at one point you just kind of go like, oh, just tell me what you want, and then approve it, please. I need this thing out of my life.
Yeah.
So with commercials, it's quite nice because you normally get to work with the directors. There's a much shorter chain of command and higher turnaround and everything. So I actually really liked that. And then, and then moved to Canada and joined Sony for a couple of years. Yeah.
I think starting out, I always recommend working commercials just because you let's say you work on an animated feature, you could spend 3 years on a feature, and especially at the beginning of your career, you're not going to get any really big stuff, and unless you're Ina, who gets to animate Harry Potter. So yeah, I mean, in general, if you work on commercials, it's like every 2 or 3 weeks you're going to knock out a commercial. So within a year, you've got so much stuff on your reel, and it's all polished work. And you learn to be fast, and you'll get to grow within that time. Even renegotiate your salary, as long as you don't mention that in the interview. But
TV, right? Like, there's some really awesome shows as well where you can get like the Puss in Boots show, like any kind of like DreamWorks show that they're doing for TV as well. You can get some really good stuff working on those as well.
The cool thing is, like, if you don't like a project, then you know it's going to be gone in like 2 or 3 weeks. It's the other advantage too. So
exactly.
I think like the first ever TV commercial I ever did, I had to animate a talking dog, like replacing the jowls, and like, so it's like a real dog and like the two dogs talking, and I think it was for like a deworming commercial or something like that, and just I didn't realize at the time, but yeah, I still have the dialogue memorized in my head of the two dogs talking, and this was 1999 or something like that. So it's pretty sad when you can remember that. Same with like when you're sick of a shot that won't go away, like you remember that shot code for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I know.
But that's cool. And how do you find like Sony compared to the London places? Like,
yeah, well, it's a whole different beast, right? It's really big. It's really corporate. I've never had to sign so many papers going anywhere. Like, their contracts are like really thick, and it's just like you can feel that you're going into a big like studio with a lot of history, which is very different coming from like a European house, especially VFX, where a lot of times it's like they're newer studios. They have been. I mean, now they've been around for a while, but like normally. That it's a different kind of approach to things, whereas Sony has like, they have like their pipeline and they have their tools, and they've been around for a while, and it feels really different. Like I definitely felt like it felt like going into a big company. And I personally had a good experience at Sony. I know like some people don't, but like for me, it was really like when I joined, and it was just about 30 people up in Vancouver, and that slowly changed. Like now it's massive. Now they have like, they're pushing everybody up here, and there's barely anything left down in Culver City. But it was a really good time to join because it was like a smaller team, and we were kind of the B team, up in Vancouver. Did a lot of street hockey and skiing, and. I don't know, and then the projects and the work started getting more and more, and because we worked on Smurfs, and I think it was 80% Culver, 20% Vancouver, and then after that there was a bit of a gap, and then Hotel Transylvania came in, which everybody was super excited about. I think they'd had it in the wings for a while, and then it was getting made, so that was really cool because I always wanted to do more cartoony stuff, right? So I was super excited, and I worked on it for like 3 months, and then I got a call from production saying, so the anim director that was on Smurfs, like they were thinking about you for this project, Oz, the Great and Powerful. It has a China doll in it and everything, and
I saw that on your reel. It's creepy.
Yeah,
but it's creepy.
The female character, yeah. But so it was really funny because like when I worked on Despero at Framestore, which is the mouse with the big ears, right? There's like a couple of really fun characters in that one as well. Like I always wanted to like do a creepy, or I like creepy and ugly characters. So then when they said China doll, I thought like, oh, it's more realistic again, and it's like pretty
Hmm.
China porcelain doll, and I was a bit like, oh, I don't want to get pigeonholed in that, like I kind of
Yeah.
want to. It was because of stuff I did on Smurfette, which the director liked, so the animation director. So I was like, oh, but Hotel T is going to be much better because it's going to push me on the cartoony side and everything.
Hmm.
And I love Gendy Tartakovsky, so. I was like, no, that's cool. I think if I can, I'd like to stay on Hotel Transylvania. And so then, and it's really funny how production reacted. So they were like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. We have like a few people here on the list, so if you don't want to, it's fine. Like a bit pissed off. I was a bit
Yeah.
like, oh no, did I, what it's like? You start going, oh no, did I piss them off? That's horrible. Like for days, I was like, oh, is that the wrong decision? But I thought, no, it's good. I want to
Yep.
get some more cartoony things on my reel. And then 2 weeks later, they call again. They go like, so we still think you should transfer, from your current project to this one. I was like, I'm wondering, is this like still a question or now, or is it, and it was more kind of like, no, I think you should, And
I love
so
that.
so then I thought, okay, this is the now or never, I was like, okay, is this the moment where then I ask for more money? And there was like this silence. And then she said, you could. And then I went, I shall. And we had another phone call scheduled for the week after where we then talked about that. So that was really good.
Well, that's one way to negotiate.
Yeah,
But
but it just came to me at that moment because I was like, oh man, they're really pushing me to do this. And then I thought, wait, this is the moment where, I finally, for once, I have like leverage.
that's exactly it. I mean, it's the perfect time when, obviously they're coming to you because they feel you're the perfect candidate for it, which says, yeah, as you said, you got leverage. And yeah, for people, you don't want to like completely flop on a project and go, hey, by the way, I want a pay rise. But when you go and kick ass, that's exactly the time to go and say, hey, by the way, here's what I've been doing, list all the success you've had, and then say, I'd like to, step it up and step up my, my income as well.
Yeah,
So for you having them come to you, I think it's like the perfect time, like the perfect combination. So that's
yeah.
so
Like
cool.
how often does that happen, right? It's like
Mm,
really, yeah, that was awesome.
that's so cool. And like for you, like it sounds like you prefer more animated style, like cartoon style animation, rather than doing more creature live action. Is that right?
I don't know actually because the thing is that I just wanted to have more of that style on my reel because I had a lot of visual effects on my
Yeah.
reel already, and I just wanted to diversify it a bit more. And being at Sony, I thought it's perfect because they have visual
Hmm.
effects and then they have, Sony Pictures Animation where they do all the cartoony stuff. So that's actually why I wanted to go there. So then, going back onto another visual effects project, I thought like, oh, okay, I'll do this. And then after that, I'll definitely want to go on a cartoony one. So after Oz, they put lots of us onto Cloudy,
Hmm.
Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs
I love
too.
that film.
It's so fun, right? Like
Yeah.
it's really good. So the thing was that like after Oz, we were all so burnt out that when we joined Cloudy, which was already then I think two-thirds into production. So when we got onto that project, like obviously then they already have their A team that works on like, they get all the cool shots.
Yeah.
Then you come on from the VFX group and it's kind of like they feel a bit like, well, you're coming there, they're going to park you there for the rest of the project to help out with stuff until another like VFX project or another project opens up maybe.
Hmm.
So it's fun to be able to do those two styles, but it's quite tough to switch when you've come from like a realistic project onto a cartoony one to kind of like put your brain on back onto, really graphic shapes and that's like a bit,
Yeah.
and especially if you're so tired, I thought that was such a pity because I couldn't really enjoy it as much as I think I would have if I would have had more sleep and more energy, So that was a real shame.
Yeah.
Like, I would have wanted to do that over again with, having 3 months off and sleeping and then kind of like going back on it.
No, I think it's so critical. Yeah, just touching base on that for a second, I think you're right. Like, I always find with this industry, when you do burn out, like, it is important to have that time to recuperate, and usually we don't get it. But, I mean, I've had projects where when I finish one, if I have the option to, I'll take a month or two off just to, get my head back in the game, or otherwise I'm just going to stop caring about what I do. So I don't know many other jobs where you kind of have that big recuperation time, or need it at least.
Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah, I had after that all finished, because then there was like the summer project that then didn't come through and everything, so they were asking for people to kind of take time off anyway. Mm-hmm. So that was then when I said I just need a long batch of time off, where I went back home, like to Germany, saw family, and kind of and
remember
I did
me?
Huh?
It's like, remember me? It's been a while.
I did a couple of teaching gigs. It's actually been quite good, because I do seminars in Amsterdam still at the Filmakademie. Cool. I started doing that ages ago, and it's like a 1 week workshop. It used to be a 2 week workshop, but then when I started working, we cut it down to 1 week. And I've been doing that every year, so that would always be the time where I do the workshop and then see family. So it's not been too bad staying in touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And everything, but like I took it was like over 3 months, I think, where then I did the Amsterdam workshop, and then I went home, and I can't remember, there was like a couple of others. I think that was the year I did I was at THU after that as well, the Trojan Horse one.
Oh yeah.
Portugal and everything, and I was thinking about taking a longer time out from the industry, because I felt so tired of it, and I kind of felt like I was losing the love for it,
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of wanted to see if maybe I wanted to do something else, or I wasn't sure. I just felt a bit lost during that time. And my friend Catherine Mullen, who, I don't know if you know her.
I don't think so.
She's at MPC, but she was saying, we're working on a couple of things, so and we have like a couple of projects on, so maybe you'd be interested in that. And it was actually through her that then I went over to MPC to work on Guardians and work at a different studio in Vancouver, and that was a really good experience. It was actually really good to just switch it up, and go somewhere else and work with a different team and different people and different environments.
Yeah.
So that was really good, because I really enjoyed it there. It was really, really nice.
Like, what were you doing on Guardians?
Oh, just a lot of spaceships. I had one shot with the raccoon, but it got cut.
I hate that.
So that sucks. Yeah.
Well,
but
cool.
It was just a short gig, like 3 months or so. And then I had other teaching things lined up, so I went and did those again, and then came back and worked on Goosebumps until I went on maternity leave, because then I came back pregnant. I bet they loved that. I was like, hey, here I am, woohoo, Goosebumps, and by the way, I'm having a baby.
At least there's a deadline of like when you're going to be able to wrap some shots up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with Goosebumps, like, that was the feature film?
Yeah.
Cool. I haven't seen it, but I saw the trailer. It looks freaking cool. It looks fun.
Yeah, really fun, like 80s kind of style, It's really...
Yeah, I loved the Goosebumps books when I was a kid, like R.L. Stein, just because I think they were small enough for me to keep my attention span. But that's cool. And like, what type of work were you doing on that?
Oh, just the creatures, like the werewolf and like giant mantis, and like all the creatures in that movie.
Do you find that you still have a lot of creative control, or at least like the rewarding kind, when you're doing creature work opposed to doing more cartoony animation? Because obviously you got to kind of hit a very specific performance, and probably, bless you, not it's a quite different kind of performance to what you'll be trying to achieve when you're doing more animated features, which is usually a lot more overpronounced type of performance.
Yeah, it's really different, I find. Like, especially if you're doing creature work, because you kind of look at a lot of reference.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a lot of werewolves?
Physics, and I look at a lot of werewolves. Try to find the local ones,
That's right, Vancouver.
Yeah, local organic small batch werewolves.
That's right.
Talk to and film for reference. No, but it's like a lot more physics involved, right? Like in Cloudy, you can do like crazy stuff. It's like bouncing all over the place, and you can squash and stretch, and not so much when you're doing VFX. I like the challenges of both, though. I like getting something to, like, a giant creature to look good and like heavy, and like when you get it right, like you can get a real, and it looks cool. That's like a good feeling, after that.
One of my buddies, he always loved doing more, more cartoony kind of character animation, just really exaggerated, squash and stretch. And then he ended up. I think we were working on. I got stuck doing a bunch of sequels for really bad Disney films, and one was George of the Jungle 2. God, that was bad. And yeah, like it was like this CG snake that he had to do that talked, but like make it look real, and it looked amazing. And I think he just instantly fell in love with the style of doing creature animation, and it's more about subtlety and less is more. Whereas I think with more cartoony, it's more is more. So but yeah, like he went on the Weta and ended up doing Golem and King Kong, and went from there. So like I think for him, he kind of found his calling when he did that snake.
Yeah, that's the thing. When I always thought, coming from like also drawing and 2D, I always thought like, oh, I miss that cartoony style kind of thing. But I actually really also enjoy, like with China Doll, just finding all those like little subtle performances in her face and like making her look appealing. When like with her face, like if you pose her mouth in the mouth corners, especially in a certain way, she'd start looking like this witch. So getting her to look like cute and pretty, but like having the performance also in the face and everything, that was really fun. I really liked that. That was cool.
I like that. And like, do you have any like disciplines or routines? Like maybe like going to work on projects, you tend to be more of a morning person, get in early, or just ways you found to...
I think I'm more like you. Like in the morning, it's kind of like, where's my coffee?
I need like an IV to stick right in.
Oh my God. Yeah, like I think when you have kids that like you forces you to change that. Like because you just get woken up in the morning. But oh my God, I find it really hard. There's something nice about getting an early start to the day. I totally understand why some people do it. It's just that it's not in my nature to do it. I sort of kind of warm up around 10 a.m. I think like 10 a.m. is good, and with kids now, like normally you're out of bed by 7:30. You
don't need an alarm. You got them. I'm actually more of a morning person. It's funny because the past month I've turned into a night person, which is a first for me because usually I'm always like 5 a.m. let's do this. And like it's just funny that like I kind of now found my flow state temporarily doing more nighttime. Like, okay, I'm gonna work till 2 a.m. and then get up and and I don't mind it, but like I do personally prefer to be a morning person when I can.
Yeah,
and
I think it's healthier. I think it's better for sure. Like I really think getting stuff done early in the day so that you have your evenings, to yourself is healthier than the other way around. Although I've done the other way around like a lot of times. But I function better actually if I force myself to get an early start. I think that's better.
Well, it kind of loops back to what we were talking about in the beginning about maintaining a social life. And like I've always been someone who I'd have studios kind of coming to me, like the owner would say like, hey, I noticed you're clocking in like 15-hour days, but I never see here at nighttime. Like, is this accurate? And it's like, yeah, check what time I swipe my key card in the morning. You know what I mean? Like I'm coming in like 4:30 in the morning. But the thing is you're able to come in when there's no distractions, and by the time everyone else just showed up, you've almost put in a full day of work. So
yeah, 4:30.
I like that.
Crazy.
Well, we had clients, I think, on that job. Like our studio, I basically was the liaison between Warner Brothers and this other studio I was working on set for, and so I would need to be in there for specific times for meetings, things like that, with like Canada. From Australia,
right, okay.
And stuff like that. And in general, though, like 4:30 is crazy, but I like the idea of going home at 6 p.m. and then having a normal life. If I want to have dinner with people, I can. If I want to chill and watch TV, I can. Like a normal person,
Yeah, but when I used to do the morning show at the radio station RTL, I had to get up at 4:30, and then I would barely be able to stay awake past 8 p.m.
Yeah, right.
No, like you get really tired, no? Like 8:30, I'd be like, ugh. Or are you somebody that can get by really little sleep?
No, I try really hard. Like I've been up for 3 days, or I've had I was doing 120-hour weeks consistently for 3 months at one point, which is extremely unhealthy, and I would never do it again. And that was the job that burned me out. But like I've done all that, and that's what kind of sickens me to see people kind of take sort of pride in doing all this stupid stuff to their bodies. And for me, like I think that minimum 6 hours sleep, as Arnold Schwarzenegger will say, through his book. Yeah, like I think sleep's important, and I don't think it should be neglected. But yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I kind of sometimes, like, if I'm up at night and my partner's like, why are you all sleepy? Like, it's only 11 o'clock, and it's like, okay, this 11 o'clock to you is the equivalent to me saying it's 5 in the morning right now, okay? Because like that's what time it is for me in terms of you got up at 10 and I got up at 4, so and that's the thing too, is kind of maintaining different body clocks with different people. It's always a bit of a struggle, which is why I guess having a partner in the industry is always good. If you're both on crazy deadlines, it's like, cool, we get to have breakfast together instead of dinner.
Yeah.
So, what's your opinion about like doing more, as you mentioned before, having more traditional background? Like, do you think being able to illustrate and sketch out poses, or just in general, like having more of that 2D understanding of drawing characters, do you think that's benefited you with your 3D a lot? Do you think it's important for people to have that kind of background?
Yeah, I think it's good if you have drawing ability or an affinity to it. I think it's really good to nurture that talent. I don't think it's really necessary if you want to do 3D animation. I've met too many people now that don't come from a drawing background but are amazing animators, and they use a lot of video reference. So right. I think with the tool of like having just your phone and being able to videotape yourself or somebody else, doing stuff, and then like being able to scrub through it and using that as your reference has that's like a really good tool, and you don't need to have a drawing skill to do that. Mm-hmm. I think like coming from that background, it really helps because I can just like analyze better if I do little thumbnails, like to analyze the poses and everything. And I think for cartoony animation, it helps because you can stylize.
Yeah, right.
Better, like you have that kind of more 2D eye, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that can help, but it definitely nowadays I don't think it's you really need it to kind of be good at animation. Like I've seen so many people that come from more like computer science backgrounds as well, and their animation is great. I had one friend.
You animate pretty well for a nerd.
Yeah, or like I knew a rigger that like switched over to animation as well, right? So that's rare as well if they go from rigging to animating.
Maybe he wanted to, he got too sensitive about people complaining about his rigs or something and wanted to be on the receiving end. No, that's cool. And yeah, so is that like a bit of a norm now? Instead of having a little, pocket mirror on your desk while you're animating, you've got your iPhone just with the camera reversed?
I think you still need the mirror, like especially for lip sync and stuff. Like you still need it. Like if you
too laggy.
It's really important to because if you're doing mouth shapes, it's just so fast to just like quickly look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Like, what you're after, and like acting it out yourself as well. For me personally, just kind of makes you feel the shot more, so you can act it through, and you kind of do it a couple times. You really get into it. It's a little bit like when you do draw and you draw like a character or a funny face, you start kind of making that face while you're drawing it.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have that, and it's similar, I find, with animation. Like if you've just gone through the shot and really thought through it and acted it out a couple of times, even if you don't end up using your own video reference or somebody else's, it's like just good to have done it because you kind of can feel the motion more. It gives you a different, I don't know, it helps kind of analyzing it and putting it onto the character.
I know, like last year when we were in Paris, like Andrew Schmidt, he was telling me, about at Pixar, you would essentially have rooms that you could book out, where it's a tiny little room with a video camera, and you essentially just kind of have a private room to yourself to act out your performances and watch it all back and kind of animate your shots, and then you go back out into the rest of the world to get back to what you're doing. But I thought it's kind of cool to at least have privacy while you're doing the silliest expressions on your face. And
yeah. Yeah. Like not a lot of places have that, right? That's Pixar. They have amazing facilities. Yeah, but like normally you can get a conference room or some other room, and you go with a fellow animator with your phones, and you do it that way.
Like the start of my career, like everyone around me were all animators. Like I basically was at a studio where I don't know, like probably everyone there was a character animator, and so I was like the odd one out. And for me, it's second nature seeing people doing like weird stuff at their desk. It's just like whatever. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I do that. Like you get up and you just kind of do a movement like a couple of times and then sit back.
Exactly. It's like another day at the office. That's cool. And like you obviously review a lot of reels of animators, right?
A little bit, yeah. Like not that many. I did a few. Can't remember now exactly. It was more like you kind of like rush through them a bit, but
skip next.
Yeah, I've done a couple. Like normally, like a lot of times reels get like kind of pre-screened by the production, you know, and then you get called in as a lead and you look at like a selection already, so it's already been kind of selected, and you look at that, and then normally the animation director looks at them and says, "What do you guys think about these?" You know, so it's already been kind of pre-selected, because I know like a lot of times students ask me, you know, so how does that work with the reels and everything? And I think because I was at the job fair once for Sony as well, and you basically have two buckets. You have like the pass on bucket and the discard bucket, and you kind of like pop them in there, and then that goes to into the office and gets like pre-screened and then distributed, you know. So it's really, I know it's like, it's weird, like if you do it that way, or then if you know somebody, you can give them your reel, and then I only did that once, and then you pass that on and say like, hey, you know, this person's looking. Which
well, yeah, I think it's a good advice too, is like when people are like applying for places, you know, that's exactly why you don't want to go through HR, because you're going through 20 steps to get in there, whereas if you know someone you know who's willing to show off your work, then it's going to be put directly in front of the person who is finally going to say yes or no, or at least yeah.
Although that's how, like, I sent my stuff through just randomly to Sony. I didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
I just sent it I put it in a big envelope, and I gave it a big kiss, and I put it in the post box, and off it went. Yeah, off it went to, I don't know where, like somewhere HR, you know, but so it can work.
Well, if anything, I guess it shows that it must have been said yes several times before it actually got the final yes. So I mean, that's pretty cool. Actually, like a friend of mine, he's a TD. I think he's a massive TD at Weta, but like we always talked back in like the late 90s, like Lord of the Rings 1 hadn't even come out yet, but we're kind of talking about doing a short film at Weta for Weta to send in about like their, you know, what happens to a show reel there, you know, just this giant black room that like is just it's kind of like Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark, you know, like this infinite room of piles of reels of like where they all get thrown into the black void, you know. But because I imagine like a lot of places it's like, all right, a lot of VHS cassettes like piling up on top of each other.
Yeah, like it's really, yeah, oh my god. Or Betacam, you remember those? Like they would get sent out. But yeah, I think nowadays, like you normally get a Vimeo link or something.
Yeah.
It's easy to review stuff at your desk.
You can skip through it too, which is awesome. VHS
it's really good.
sucked.
Yeah. Oh my god, so bad. Like I remember also even with DVDs, like I mean, you'd barely make it past the 10-second mark. No, also because you don't have time. You like look at the first 10 seconds, and if you go meh, then you just like pop it back out.
Yeah, exactly.
One.
At least YouTube, it's like loaded up, click through. It's like, all right, this is neat. Yeah, so it's definitely a huge advantage. Actually,
yeah.
Just like one or two more questions, but like, I did see you had an article, like buddy of mine, Jim Thacker, wrote on expert advice. I think when you're putting out that DVD, like, do you have any industry advice for people who are kind of breaking into the industry, if I can pronounce my words correctly?
So people that are...
I love asking this because I'm just totally putting you on the spot here. But I mean, at the same time, like you teaching at VanArts, like you obviously have like a lot of people that you're helping day to day with not only their skills, but also with the next step of getting into the industry. So for people kind of starting out, and whether it's more setting expectations or just kind of breaking bad habits, or let's say with salary, you know, all the kind of crazy stuff that people tend to have misconceptions about. Like, do you have any advice for people, you know, in terms of breaking?
Yeah, I think what's important is like when you have a show reel, to maybe show it to a couple of people. Hopefully you can somehow, you know, somebody that's either been in the industry or that is in the industry that you can show it to get feedback before you send it in. I think like a lot of mistakes people make is like they kind of cram everything on there.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you look at it, you say, you know, there's like big quality differences between different kind of like shots or exercises. And then you kind of go, oh, I would just cull that. And even if it's very, very short, you know, you just make sure that those very short, like, I don't know, 30 seconds or something are looking really, really good, instead of sending in like a minute of like some good, some meh, you know. And it gets hard to, when you've done, say, 5 animation exercises, sometimes it gets hard to see it yourself, which ones are looking better than others, because you've been so close to it for so long. So I would definitely recommend having people look at it and then give you feedback on what they think looks good and what doesn't look good, and to listen to that feedback as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's great advice. Like, especially like starting out, you know, I just remember like whenever you look at a reel with like a couple of people, and it's always, especially even if they're in the industry, but they're, for whatever reason, emotionally tied to that one piece that they killed themselves for, that they kept on their reel from their student reel. Because I've always said, like, your first reel is a throwaway. So you use it to get in the door, and then you get rid of it, and you just have production work. Because it's always like there's one piece that's still from their student reel they kept on there. And you could be watching a reel, and, you know, usually you look at the resume later. You look at the reel, and you check it out. It's like, all right, this is cool. And it's always that one piece that makes you pull out the resume, like, oh yeah, they're a junior, you know, like you wouldn't even question it if you hadn't like seen that one piece. Like, why do you have student stuff on your reel? So and I've seen people not get a job or go from the top of the list literally to the do not hire list because of like one bad 2-second shot or whatever. And you gotta learn to be brutal about that stuff. Less is more.
I did a bit of like a because like I had my ex-boyfriend, actually, he did editing, and so we did like a little edited like intro piece, you know, where there's just like like really short different kind of like shots, where it was like a mix of kind of stuff from when I was a student and a couple of things from when I was working professionally as well, which was a really good way of like kind of me feeling satisfied that I feel like, you know, it's still kind of in there, but it's just really short, kind of like edited, and then the name comes up with the show that says show animation show reel, and then I start the.
That's cool. It's like a bumper or something to kind of get their attention. Actually, I'll interrupt for 1 second. I want to hear more about this. That's YouTube, I think, started to do that for a little bit, where they would show highlights of a movie trailer because of millennials having like the 8-second attention span. So they would have highlights of a movie trailer, and then they showed the movie trailer. It became like a regular thing they were doing, just because that way you're like, all right, where's the next 30 seconds of my precious time going to? Like you need something. So I knew that like you pop the show reel in, and then you just need something to catch attention, and then you need like something solid, and then something really good to end with. That's always how I approached it. So that's why we edited like these, just like a couple of seconds of like just shot, and then the title, and then the rest of it. That's cool. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I've never heard of that, actually. I think that is really great advice, because again, you know, what we were saying before about like, let's say VHS days, you'd put the cassette in, wait for it to go in, you know, wait for it to initialize, then you hit play, wait for the screen to come up, and it's like a minute, and you're already frustrated. You're already like, this better not suck. I'm gonna be so mad. And, you know, even now, like reviewing reels, it's like there's so many to go through, and usually you have like a list to churn through, and it's so easy to kind of like just catch someone off guard, where they might be looking at something, someone talks to them for a second, they look back and they assume they've been watching the whole time and go on to the next thing. Like, you want to get their attention. You want to show like, hey, here's what you're about to watch. Kind of like teaching. It's like, tell someone what you're going to teach them what you're gonna, you know, what you're doing, and then tell them what you just taught them, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's great advice. I think it's really cool. I think I'm gonna start to wrap things up. I guess like one last question would be, where would people go online to find out more about you? Do you have a personal website?
Yeah, I have, ina.com. So in-ah.com is just my website with work stuff. I haven't really updated it in a while, but normally the CV stuff is all updated. But there's my show reel on there, and like some of the drawings I've done, like my portfolio and everything.
So cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That would be the place to go, I think. And LinkedIn. So cool. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, no, it's really nice talking to you.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Again, thanks to Ina for taking time out to do this episode. I had a blast. It was really cool talking with her. And I'm going to be back tomorrow with episode 113, jumping on a lot of new trends and really being able to identify and adapt and incorporate a lot of the new trending technology and other things, just different ways that you can get a head start or more of an advantage within the industry and really build your name up. So this is going to be a really cool episode, and plenty more episodes coming out. So like I said, there's a bunch of new free training released today you can check out. In addition to that, I wanted to theme this year your best year yet, and you can get all the additional training for the bootcamp, including the video tutorials, the videos, the guide, everything else, all downloadable if you go to the show notes, alanmckay.com/112, and it will link to everything there. Okay, so that's it for now. I'll be back with episode 113. Finally, shoot me an email. Let me know what you think about all these episodes and the whole idea around theming these, because I'm really digging it. I'm hoping you are too, and I'd love to get some feedback from you. So you might think that, oh, if I send Alan an email, he probably won't reply. I will do my best. I have my good days, my bad days, but I definitely read everything that comes in. So please shoot me an email and I'll do my best to respond to you. Either way, I would love to hear from you. So let me know. And my email will be in the show notes. Otherwise, you can go to your email app and go amckay@alanmckay.com. So amckay@ALLANMCKAY.com. All right, so that's it for now. I'll be back with episode 113. Until then, rock on.